I look after MBA full-time, part-time, the MBA Global Asia program, which is a joint program between London Business School, Columbia Business School, and the University of Hong Kong, and specialized 7 master programs. And my responsibility is from marketing and admission, recruitment, to program operations, to student enrichment services, um, career services, alumni engagement services. So all the teams report to me. So basically, as a senior executive director, I look after all the aspects of basically all the master programs we have. Just for MBA programs, we probably process 3,000 plus applications. But if you ask me at all the master level programs, we are probably talking about 25,000 applications around. If you take every program into consideration, so it's a huge number of applications coming in. And of course, in terms of offers, that depends from batch to batch as to how many offers we'll make. But our aim is to make sure that we get a part-time MBA class of round about 130 to 140 every year, and a full-time class of around 50 to 55. So our full-time program is actually quite small. So and it's all done in a deliberate way, because we understand that full-time program needs a lot of attention. These are the students who are leaving their jobs. They are taking that 1 year, 1.5 years off in terms of enhancing their knowledge and then moving on to the next career path. So that's why we keep it small. But at the same time, they don't lose out on networking, because we have a large part-time class, because it's 2 years for part-time. So it's at any given point of time, we have around 300 part-time executive students. Plus, we have the 7 masters to the specialized master program students, which is around 2,000 students in the school. And then plus we have the EMBA, another 40 to 50. So altogether, 2,500 students at any given point of time, we think is a good number, but each program has its own little way of giving more personalized attention. So actually, I don't like the idea of having a particular profile. I'll tell you that what I mean by that is that if you start having that kind of a formula in your admission, you tend to get lookalikes. So probably it works at some level because it's easy to look after lookalikes, but from the point of view of their learning, from the point of view of actual real diversity, I really think that that is not the right way to move forward for a business school, for an MBA program, especially as such. And that's why we don't have this most preferred checklist, what we follow. We do believe that, yes, there are certain qualities we are looking for, or a certain type of personalities we are looking for. But then we want that to be as broad as possible. So it's a very heterogeneous class, not a very homogeneous class, because that actually doesn't work for MBA. Because MBA classroom has to be reflection of what really happening in a real world business arena. Otherwise, we will have these students who will go to their next career option as such, and will not be able to do well in those careers, because then they didn't have that kind of experience. So that's why we don't have a formula to say so. As I said, we really want to have people coming from very diverse backgrounds. So at one end would be, say, somebody who was born in country A, went and studied in country B, and then started working in country C. So these candidates have a very different view of looking at things. Their exposure level is really different. But at the same time, there would be another candidate, say A, and this candidate never left the country of birth, always been there, have even worked for a local company, not even a MNC, but they bring a very different perspective to the class. So again, can you say this A is better than B? Not really. But the key component then is to look at the certain common threads, as we call it. So whether they have that right motivation towards their MBA journey, whether their experience is rich enough to translate into knowledge for the rest of the class. Do we look at them and we feel that their experience, their exposure, and their personality would be suitable for the culture which we are trying to have for our business school? So I think that amount of fit is important. Yes, the starting point, the basic level has to be taken care of, which is which university did they graduate from, what kind of a background they had, what kind of a work experience. And in that context, I will tell you that we go for quality of work experience rather than quantity of work experience. Because that's another thing, like sometimes some people think, oh, if you have 5 years experience is better than having somebody with 2 years experience. I totally disagree with that. That 2 years for that person could have been so eventful, given the industry that person comes from, or the kind of organization that person comes from, as compared to say 5 years for someone who probably never stepped out of the comfort zone, who never had a very challenging task to do. So we have to balance all that. We have to also balance that with another very important admission requirement, to say so, the GMAT GRE score. Sometimes some people whose job is not that important may probably get a higher GMAT or GRE because they have more time to practice, for example. Vis-a-vis say somebody who is really is doing some very interesting projects and is spending a lot of time in that learning process and giving to their own job, and they may not have that much time to practice. So we need to take all these things into consideration and then match that with what our culture is. Who are we looking for? Just to get that holistic picture and to make sure that candidates get a platform where one aspect of their life can be compensated by another requirement. Because sometimes, maybe during our undergraduate days, maybe we didn't do well in our and our GPA was lower, and whatever reason at that age, maybe you were more interested in sports, maybe you're not too sure what subject area you wanted. So we don't want a situation that you are penalized for that low GPA forever in your life. That's not fair. So, but by then having a higher GMAT or GRE, you are able to showcase that, hey, academically I'm still very sound. I'll be able to deliver in my MBA class. Please just don't look at my GPA, which might be lower. So that's why these kind of tools are important, which give a broader definition. Like some people, it's not their fault that they didn't go to a top range university. Maybe their financial situation at that point of time, or family situation, didn't allow them to go to another city which has better universities. They had to be in a small town in some country, and the best university in that town was that university they went to. So are we going to penalize them all their life that, oh, you went to that university, so no? So situations are there in people's life, and as schools we need to be aware of it. We need to be empathetic towards about it. And that's why then we look at the other factor. We see that in spite of going to that university, this person was able to get into one of the top companies in that country and was able to do well, compete with the students from the top-notch universities of that particular country. Then that becomes more important. So that's why that balancing of different requirements and having that holistic approach is extremely important. It boils down to, again, interview is a great platform to students to showcase who they really are. Sometimes what we see on the paper may not be reflected on the real personality of the person. And that's why the importance of interview, and both ways. Sometimes you feel the candidate is great on the paper, worked for a great company, very high GPA, a very high GMAT or GRE, but then when you actually communicate with them, you realize that maybe this person may have prepared very good application material, but may not be that strong candidate. But then at the same time, we have also seen that some people look mediocre on paper but they just lit up during the interview. They're able to communicate and reflect upon their own experiences really well. So that's why the importance of interview. And for us, yes, it is very labor intensive, but for us, the most important component of selection at Hong Kong U is actually the interview. Because yes, all the other things which we talked about, they get you to the interview. And then it's the interview where we want to make sure that what's all these things, what you have reflected on in your application form, your essay, your CV, your background, what your recommenders have said about you, whether that really translates into who you are. And then that brings us to another question you asked. So how is the interview like? It's just like a job interview. That's why, because we are testing out their knowledge on the job, what they have done, because that's very important component for MBA. We are looking at from what the HR will look at, which is what is their attitude like, would they fit into our culture, and then trying to counter check certain things. That's a typical HR perspective. But at the same time, we'll take the functional perspective or the business perspective, which is trying to really understand what have you put on your CV and is that what you have done. It's very easy to say led a team of so and so for XYZ project, but then when you start drilling down, you sometimes realize led means was part of the team. So small thing, I'm just giving you one little example. But then so that's why it's very important to have the interview. And at the same time, it's a great platform for students to really showcase their strengths to the school. My suggestion to students always is that the interview itself is a two-way street. So also use that interview not just to pitch yourself to the school, but at the same time try to understand the school itself. The questions the admission committee will ask you also reflects what is important for that school. The questions you ask the admission committee end of the interview and the answers you get will also give you some reflection on what that school is all about. And the best advice to the students would be, make sure that you have spoken to current students and alumni to really understand the experience of the school. And then the further advice connected to that is, don't get too excited when everything what is said is great, and don't get too dejected when some negative comments on certain aspects are told to you. If you go to any organization, forget about business schools, anybody who's worked for X organization, they will have some great things to talk about, some not so great things. Some people will be super positive for everything. Some people will be super negative for everything. So have that idea of how to filter out information. And that's why I say, if you meet some alum or student who's like, everything is great, good, great, don't get too excited. And then you meet somebody who's like, oh, this was one of my worst experiences possible. Maybe for that person, may not be true for you. So balance that. Students should really realize that the rejection may not be because that candidate is not a good candidate. The rejection might be because they don't fit into the program, this particular school. And sometimes that rejection is good, because if you go into a program which is not the right fit for you, one, you'll be unhappy during your program. Second, you may not be able to get what you wanted from the program. That's why one of the very important tasks of an interviewer or the person who's going through the admission forms and everything, and a committee which is making that decision, is to really also see whether our program is able to provide what the student is looking for. We also don't want that mismatch, because if you are a student who's unhappy, you will be an unhappy alum, and then that, it creates a very unhappy cycle as such. So the rejection is not necessarily connected to just that, oh, because I'm a good candidate, because maybe that school or that program is not a fit. Maybe some other program or maybe other school is a better fit for what you are looking for and what your profile is about. Also connected to location, right? So Hong Kong as a location is going to be very different than, so say for example, Michigan as a location or Boston as a location. Hong Kong as a location is going to be very different than a Tokyo as a location. So all these factors come into place, and so that's why my advice to applicants and students is, don't take that rejection in that form. That's one part of it. The second part of it is that if you believe that this is the school for me, this is the location for me, this is the program for me, and for some reason you get rejected, then think of all those successful people who got rejected so many times, and listen to their interviews, listen to their pitches. I always talk about Walt Disney. Walt Disney was rejected something like 37 times to get a loan to put the whole Walt Disney together. 37 times, and he went back and back and back, and look where Walt Disney is today. So so that's my advice to the students. We believe that whoever is applying to our business school, it should be merit-based. It's not a need-related scholarship, and that's why we will consider all those applicants. And we have enough information through the application form, through the interview process, through the recommendations, through essay. We have enough information to judge, and of course GMAT, GRE scores, to whether to give them admission or admission plus scholarship. And then if it's a scholarship, then what amount and everything. So that's how we work it out, and we are very, very clear that we have to be very transparent about admission and scholarship at the same time. So we don't make decisions at a later stage looking at whether these guys are going to accept or not accept. I do understand some schools do that. But from our side, we are always very clear. You got admitted with the scholarship, you got admitted without scholarship, and then we stick to that. So that the students can make a well-informed decision. We don't evaluate differently at all. So because I do understand for some school the fee structure is different for local candidates and international candidates and so on and so forth. We don't have that system. So it's the same tuition fee for everyone, and that's why the evaluation criteria would be absolutely same for people. Doesn't matter which part of the world you're applying from. Yes, we just take into consideration some small little things, like we make sure that our admission committee is very well aware of local nuances. So for example, we know that in Korea, for example, people stick to that same company, or in Japan, people stick to that same company, and the titles are very conservative. So even after 10 years, somebody in Japan could be a staff, and vis-a-vis some other countries where you could be a director. So we want to make sure that we are, the admission committee is briefed about such nuances, so that when they are evaluating candidates, they don't feel, oh, how come this person is just a staff even after 10 years? Because that's the culture of the company, that's the culture of that region. So we do keep those little things in mind, but as such, there is no, I would say, change or difference in terms of the evaluations. I believe that that's why doing homework before is important. That's why talking to alums and students and getting an idea of, in the previous batches, what kind of scholarships were given, what kind of amount was given. So to get that some kind of a feel is very important. And at the same time, I would say that when they are not too sure whether this is what I wanted, I want more, they have to again try to reflect whether are they going to do it to the extent that it will break the string. And then if we start the process of admission with a little bit of a negativity then which seeps in saying, hey, you know what, do we really want this student? Maybe not. And then there's a way and ways to means to actually say no, even if you're given the offer. So I would suggest that be very careful about that. But the problem is that there are a lot of schools which agree to that, and that is an issue definitely as as an industry. So there are a lot of schools, I'm sure, like us, who once we make a decision, that's the decision. And because we really cannot have this kind of a negotiation about such things. And not only that, for our case, we actually cannot go back to the committee, because if we go back to the scholarship committee, that's going to be a major question. Why in the very first place X amount was recommended and now it's X plus whatever? So I think for schools like us, which are, we are part of a larger university, which is a very traditional university, we need to follow certain rules and regulations. But at the same time, I also am aware of some schools which absolutely the whole admission process is a negotiation. So again, it boils back to what kind of a culture are you looking for in your school? What kind of a fit do you see yourself in a school? And that's what I always throw to the candidates also. When they get back to us saying X school has agreed to give me this, Y school said I don't need this requirement. And our answer is always, you decide what's important for you. We need this and this for certain reasons, and we are going to stick to it. You decide what kind of a culture you want to be part of, what kind of a school you want to be part of. Simple. Candidates sometimes underestimate the communication they have with the admissions team. They sometimes feel that, only in the interview, I need to present my best foot forward. But sometimes a lot of schools, like including Hong Kong U, the admission staff is a very central part of our overall evaluation. So we literally sit together, and doesn't matter at what level the admission staff is, they are involved. And then when we go through candidates, we do ask, how was your interaction with this candidate? What was your feel about this candidate? What kind of questions this candidate asked? So this is really a tip I want to give to the students, that remember that it's not just the last part of the 8, it's the overall connection and what you can establish with the school, and also if you establish a better connection and a rapport with the admission staff, you also would understand the school better. So don't treat that as an inquiry. On the contrary, treat that as your first touch point with the school, because you are going to invest a lot of your time and resources into this program. So make sure you do that.